Previously on agentpalmer.com, Born Standing Up celebrates the struggle of Steve Martin finding his genius. Palmer's trek continues with Star Trek Insurrection, and if you haven't subscribed to Swapna yet in some way, what are you waiting for? This is the Palmer Files, episode 128 with Joel Duggan, a podcaster, Twitch streamer, animator, cartoonist, and content creator who wears even more hats than that. We discuss explaining what you do, commercials, influences, getting started, learning from others, passion, the desire to share, and go behind the scenes on his podcasts and processes. Are you ready? Let's do the show! Hello and welcome to the Palmer Files. I'm your host, Jason Stershik, also known as Agent Palmer, and on this 128th episode is Joel Duggan. He's co-host of one of the best Minecraft podcasts in the world, The Spawn Chunks, but that's in addition to his own podcast, The Citadel Cafe, and his streaming on Twitch. But he's also an animator and cartoonist. He's like me in that he's always got something cooking. That's just one of the reasons why he's here. We discuss explaining what he does to other people. We worry with each other about copycatting and emulation, talk about our podcasting influences, what we learned from the other creatives we met along the way, and even go behind the scenes of his processes on the Citadel Cafe and the Spawn Chunks. All of that and a whole lot more is coming your way shortly. But before we get there, remember that if you want to discuss this episode as you listen or afterwards, you can find all related ways to contact my guest, Joel, and myself in the show notes. You can find Joel's podcast respectively at thecitadelcafe.com or thespawnchunks.com, or see all of his stuff with links to his socials, YouTube, and Twitch at joelduggan.com. That's JoelDuggan.com. Don't forget you can see all of my writings and rantings on agentpalmer.com, and of course, email can be sent to thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. So without further ado, let's get into it. Joel, it's not an easy question, but it is an easy question. You've worn many hats over the years, professionally, and right now you are a content creator, and I want to know, is being a content creator the hardest thing to explain when people ask you what you do by comparison to like some of the other entertainment stuff you've done in the past?
I would say it used to be.
Okay.
I don't lead with content creator. I normally lead with podcaster, because now when you say podcast, like most people, especially most people in like my contemporary age group, give or take 10 years either side, will know what you mean.
Okay.
And I think that helps a lot because of just the saturation of podcasts. The fact that so many famous people have podcasts now. You know, you look at like the Kelsey brothers or Conan O'Brien, like all these folks, they've got podcasts all over YouTube and everywhere. And so when you say that, people tend to know. The content creation side, I feel like those are smaller circles for me. And again, you can say, well, I do content creation, and people can say like, okay, well, I think I know what that means. And then when you start to dive into what kind of content that you make, and that's where people start to get confused and that the eyes glaze over. And that's kind of what used to happen when I would be at, let's say, a wedding or a Christmas party or something like that. And I would talk about the other hats that I've wore, you know, working as a professional illustrator and artist. People would understand what that was. They knew what an artist was. They knew what a comic artist was. But then the next question would be, well, like, well, how do you make money with that? Like, how does that work? Like, I know what you do, but I don't know how you do it and survive. And so those would always be the weird.
You still get that though, right? I mean, podcaster, the next question is, how do you make money with that? That's.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yeah. And for me, it's always been crowdfunding. So Patreon, relying on the listeners. There was once upon a time I did a couple of short show stints that had advertising built in, but they weren't my shows. I was helping somebody out with other shows. But most of the time it's just been, hey, listeners, if you enjoy the show and you'd like to support us, then check out the Patreon. And that's the way that we've been able to do successful things with the Spawn Trunks. And on my own part, with the Citadel Cafe on the side, like that hobby show has been with me for almost 13 years now. And again, it's all crowdfunded and supported with the people that enjoy it. And I like it because nothing takes the wind out of my sails listening to a podcast than stopping abruptly for an ad read. I respect that it has to happen on some of these larger shows and that the production costs involved require advertising, but sometimes the choice of advertiser, like, did you look around at all?
Yeah,
like,
yeah.
why,
It's one of those things where for YouTube as well, I'm willing to sit through ads because I know a portion of that ad revenue goes back to the creator. And I think
sure.
I'm 40. So for most of my life, I've dealt with ad commercials, like even Netflix now, like that was kind of an adjustment period of like, oh wait, there is no built-in bathroom break to any of these shows. Like you have to actively pause. So I'm still in the mindset of like, well, there'll be a break, right? Like there'll be a break. But some of the breaks they choose, if it's not like creator chosen, are like, well, that I wouldn't have put a pause there. Like that's just And so some of it's content, like what's the ad, and some of it's also placement, like you just cut him off mid sentence. Like what are you doing?
Yeah, I find that Twitch is really bad for that with the ads on streams that I watch where I maybe am not a subscriber and I do see ads because I don't have Turbo to skip the ads. I do subscribe to YouTube Premium, so I haven't watched a YouTube ad in probably 2 years. And I checked that because I was also in the same mindset as someone that puts content on YouTube. I wanted to support the creators that I was watching. So I checked with my co-host Johnny, who's on YouTube as Pixel Riffs. And he said that, oh no, if you've got YouTube Premium, then you still are supporting the creator. Like if there's an ad playing, Premium is considered when they're looking at the views that are going into that. So that, okay, well, I feel great then because then I can do Premium, avoid the ads, and not have to worry about it. And on Twitch, though, I find that it's often the same ad. It's like the same car ad or the same service ad for a cell phone or something that you see at the pre-roll, whatever mid-roll ads they have going on, like every 15 minutes or however the creator has it set up. And you're watching the exact same run of 3 ads every single time. And I, like you, grew up with commercials on television. They weren't great, but they were just a part of life. Yeah. But at least they were different most of the time. Yeah. Like the ad block at the start of Friends was different than the ad block in the middle of Friends. And then at the end of Friends, it was something else entirely. And at least, and sometimes they were even funny. But now it's the same ad over and over again at least on some platforms.
Now, you're kind of on both sides of this Twitch, YouTube, podcast platform. You are creating content and videos and podcasts and episodes, but you're also consuming that stuff. Does the consuming end take away maybe a little enjoyment does the creating end take away from the consuming end in that like, oh, I want to know how that happened, or like that's really good, I'm not gonna like like maybe a little imposter syndrome, maybe not, but like not everybody that watches TV makes TV. And you and I just went through a few minutes of talking about all these things that we consume that we also make in a roundabout way.
I think for me, and this goes to something that my co-host Johnny says when people ask, like, how do I start making content? And his answer, which I think is a really good answer, is to make the kind of content that you would like to watch.
Okay.
And so I keep up on a few creators. Most of it just has to do with being an adult, being self-employed, and what time do I have available. I don't think making content has me watching less content. I just think busier weeks, I watch less content than I do on weeks. Or it could also just be interests. Like if I was like maybe it's tax season and I happen to be watching a lot of videos about like investment or, advice on that realm. And then all of a sudden the YouTube algorithm is just sending me a bunch of that stuff. And then I just don't get to my subscription list that much that week, but then I catch up because it's always there later on. I think that for me, I do still watch a lot of content. As far as YouTube goes, I don't watch a lot of Twitch streams, but that's a bigger block. Like you're looking at stopping into a stream. If you want to be there for the whole thing for context, you might be looking at it for 3 hours, that kind of thing. Twitch streams are the kind of things that I'll lurk in. Like I'll put them up on the TV when I'm cleaning the kitchen, when I'm doing some chores around the house, that kind of thing. Sometimes I'll have them on my phone in my pocket, and then I'll open the phone if something interesting sounds like it's happening.
Okay.
Because I don't have to just watch it. It's a great way to support some of my favorite streamers too, just to kind of lurk in the background. But with podcasting, I don't know if I've ever really stopped listening to podcasts. I feel like sometimes I end up avoiding the kind of podcasts that I make once I start making them. It depends on
that's fair.
The thing. So like, I don't listen to a lot of Minecraft podcasts, although like there's not that many out there now. And I also don't listen to a lot of television and film critic podcasts. I'll watch more reaction stuff on YouTube than I will listen to podcasts in that realm. I think I'm a little bit worried about copycatting, and I used to listen to a lot of that stuff, but then I started one. And it's like, okay, I've gathered the information. I know the style of podcast. I know the style of presentation that I want to make. And then I go ahead and make my own version of that, but then I stop listening to the other ones. And so a lot of what I end up listening to is more like interview shows or slightly more educational stuff where you got someone being interviewed that's an expert in psychology, or they're a medical doctor, or they're a lawyer, or just something that's a little bit more interesting than, the entertainment stuff that I tend to make. I tend to consume a little bit more serious content, but then make the lighter side of things.
One of my big influences was Mark Maron, and I've fallen behind because he puts out 2 shows a week. And when you spend a lot of time editing audio or recording audio, and same as like, I also want to put like a Twitch stream on in the background to support the creators I like, but you can't always do that on the same device. It's like, it's not as easy. And I started a thing where, I had a few close friends compare me in like speech patterns to Maron, and I don't hear it necessarily, but I now actively avoid listening to his show within 24 hours of me recording, just to kind of keep a copycat barrier, even if it's just cadence, because I try and talk like I would if you and I were like in a cafe having coffee.
Sure.
But if other people hear that and I don't, the fear is always like, oh no, maybe it's true. I don't know. I mean, I have consumed a lot of his 1,200, 1,400 episodes, so it's possible, but it's also like, how can I keep this distance so I'm not just another copycat? Yeah, it's not easy.
Yeah, the 2 shows from the 2 podcasters that I got into this business admiring, the morning stream with Scott Johnson. He also did The Instance. I think that show's gone away now. And then Tom Merritt, who I've been following for a long, long time through several different shows that he's been doing. But the through point has always been like a daily tech news show. So it's not just 2 shows a week. Like both of these guys were putting out content daily. Still are. Then I lost my commute and I started working from home full time again in 2017. And I found it more and more difficult to keep up with the daily shows. I still pop by when there's a really important news day for tech, or if there's other stuff like that, but I just can't keep up. I tend to have a slightly more not episodic, but like standalone. Like I prefer the standalone podcast where I'm not following the news for the week. I'm more like listening to an interview show where like it's one and done. And if I like that interview, then I'll listen to another one from that creator or that kind of thing. But yeah, I know what you mean about emulation. I absolutely pulled a lot shamelessly because Tom Merritt is very talented, but the way that he structures the podcasts, the news shows, because of the news that we cover with Minecraft on the Spawn Trunks podcast, I mean, it's often a snapshot that's updated weekly. So whenever we sit down, there's a bunch of technical stuff to get through. And I stole the rundown style of, Daily Tech News Show and put that into the Spawn Chunks just because it works so well. I mean, someone that's been in journalism for 20 plus years, like, don't rock the boat. They're very good at what they do. We of course have made it our own and worked it into our own styles and all that stuff. And it works for us on the Spawn Chunks. But I think that, when you're looking at creating content, like after you decide, okay, this is the kind of content that I watch and this is the kind of content that I would like to make, then the next step would be, in the same way that artists beg, borrow, and steal as they're learning coming up, then do the same thing. Like, it's not, you can't copyright the way that a podcast is structured. That's just, they're either good or they're bad, or they work for you or they don't, and try out different things. Like, I think that's a really good way to learn the things that you like. And I've had these scripts for the Citadel Cafe and the Spawn Chunks now for 13 and 6 years respectively. And I stole the script from the Citadel Cafe, plumped it into the Spawn Chunks, and just rewrote it so it fit that show. Yeah. And over time, the Citadel Cafe podcast, that kind of those intros, those plugs, they've been refined over years to be shorter, more concise, easier to roll off the tongue. The stuff that you write when you first start is way too wordy and hard to remember. And it's nice when you can get into a groove and what works for you. And you're only going to know that if you've got some time in the chair.
There's a lot of trial and error. I also find that when you get into the habit of creating on a regular basis, it doesn't matter the frequency, but a regular basis, I find that my consumption falls off. I have a weekly blog and I have a bi-weekly podcast. So 6 pieces of content are coming out from me every month. And the amount of things I could consume when it was just the 4 blog posts before the podcast existed, and the amount of things I can consume, whether it's YouTube or podcasts or movies or television, adding just 2 episodes of the podcast, my consumption went like off a cliff. Like, cause it's just so hard to do both at the same time. Like, you can maybe do some research and maybe some writing with something on in the background. Maybe. Depends on the kind of writer you are. You can't edit a podcast with something on in the background. You can't record it with something in the background. And so there's just this level of like, there are so many people out there that I want to support, and the only way I can support all of them is to watch their stuff, and I just don't have that kind of time.
That's when I was working as an artist more regularly. That was the thing. I could consume podcasts all day long. As long as I wasn't writing a comic, once the writing was done, it was just drawing. Like, I was executing things that didn't require that part of my brain.
Yeah.
But if I was doing email or bookkeeping as part of the home business, I couldn't listen to a podcast, but every other time of day it was free. But then, like you said, once you get into recording stuff or editing stuff, there's some things that you just can't have going on at the same time. I find too, researching and doing like the news for the week, like as I'm putting together the notes for the Spawn Chunks or forming my thoughts for the Citadel Cafe, I can't listen to another show at the same time. Like, I really have to have my silence.
You can put music on though? Music's fine?
I could put music on. I don't listen to a lot of music in the background in the office. I just tend to go quickly through the silence. I don't know why that is. I'll multitask in terms of like, maybe I'll be texting a friend like on the Mac and just be using the keyboard instead of my phone to type back and forth with my parents or somebody, and kind of use that desk time to kind of catch up on things like that. But most of the time I'm just kind of sitting here in silence. But I live in an apartment building where during the day, a lot of the people here are at work. So it's a really nice, quiet space. And so if I'm listening to music, it might be later on when I don't like the music next door, or like you can hear the TV murmuring from some other place, or there's just noise in the backyard that you want to drown out, or just whatever it happens to be. It's a little bit more lively, I guess, at night to have that kind of stuff going, but it's just so peaceful here during the day. Sometimes I just don't want to disturb it. It's funny.
So you have 2 podcasts and you mentioned them both, but I want to talk about the Spawn Chunk specifically in terms of guests, because you've had a lot of guests on that you've talked to about process of, what they do in Minecraft, but also what they do with videos or content, or, what their processes are. And I've on this show talked to a lot of different artists in various things, and it seems like all creatives are not the same, but we're all built slightly different than everyone else. And so I was just curious, is there anything that seems to be like a through line, no matter who you're talking to, when you have those creatives on, that you're like, this is just the thing. Like everybody just seems to, this, like the secret to happiness is to do it for yourself and not for the audience, or,
right.
Just because that's the thing is most of the people I talk to, I'd say 80%. I don't want to say it's 100, but 80% always say the real thing is I wish I'd done it. I'd started sooner. Like that's like the one thing. There's the 20% that's like, no, I started it at the right time. Everybody else is like, no, I wish I'd started sooner. But like you get this opportunity, and everybody you've talked to is so different, but there have to be through lines.
I think the through line from the creative people, if you're talking specifically about content creation, then I think it's a niche passion. And so for the spawn chunks, that's usually Minecraft. And then quickly followed by the reason that they play the game is because they want to share the experience, share what they're building with other people. And creating content is the quickest way to do that.
Okay.
And what I find quickly comes into play with that is like, okay, I'm passionate about this game. I see other people sharing it. I feel like I'm creative or entertaining enough to do that. But then quickly after that comes, I don't want to say perfectionism, but with the passion comes the desire to do it well and or right, air quotes. And I think that it depends on the individual. I don't see imposter syndrome as much. It's more about I'm doing it, but I want to do it right. And so I'm taking the time. Like there's a sacrifice happening in my life somewhere else, whether it's time on another hobby, whether it's finally getting to a point where they can leave their day job and do it full time, whatever it is. There's a thing where the content creators tend to want to do this very well. And that might only mean one video a week or one video every 2 weeks depending on the size of the creator, right? And because people have family lives and, if you've got 3 kids, then like you're going to be pulled in many different directions in terms of, your ability to do content creation. And I feel like those through lines that you're talking about are definitely the passion, and then the not the need, but like the desire to share that with people as part of the satisfaction. Like it's not just playing Minecraft. It's that I play Minecraft and I get to share it with people and get feedback. And it's not people necessarily looking for pats on the back. It's more like, no, this was just a really cool thing that I experienced in the game and that I built in the game. What did you experience and build in the game? And like, tell me in the comments, or, you end up making friends online and then you've got peers that you can share ideas and thoughts with. And it happens quite a lot on multiplayer servers where you'll have like-minded creative people grouping together so that if something happens on the server, you may not be the only one witnessing it. And then it's like, going to a concert with one of your best friends. You're just like, God, that was so cool. And then you can talk about it after. And I think that level of, I think engagement is what really drives people to stick around. Like the desire to share is what I think draws people to content creation, but then the community that comes up around it, the friends that you make while you're doing it, I think that's what kind of keeps that wheel going. Once you've realized, oh yeah, okay, sharing is good, but then creating together and sharing the creative experience is the next step.
Gotcha. So I want to take you back and keep you right here. Based on what you said as far as creating art, which I think a lot of it is, whether it's a video about a castle or what have you, or, this podcast, I like to think there's some artistic value in the editing I do, but you've been in the arts forever. it feels like it looks like from the outside, are the things we just spoke about as far as like sharing this with other people and getting feedback and having a peer group within illustration or writing or animation or what have you. Is that what started it for you? Little Joel way back when?
I don't know about Little Joel. I mean, Little Joel found out that you could work as an animator, which is, what people did at Disney. And that was like, I'm sold. That's what I'm heading out to do. Like that was the mission. I don't think I was really old enough to understand community at that point because there was no internet. I didn't have ready access to the internet until university, I don't think.
Okay.
So when it comes to like my young adult life, the art that I did after finishing art school with web comics definitely was part driven by the want to share the experience. Like you don't necessarily, some people might, I did not necessarily draw web comics to read them myself and chuckle, right? I wanted to share them and see if I could land those jokes, if I could get people to want to read it every week, to look forward to it. And sharing that online was the easiest way to do that. That led to listening to podcasts that had other artists creating webcomics on them.
Okay.
Webcomics Weekly was a big show that I used to listen to. And then listening to other comic artists talking about like how they made it, how they did it, sharing the industry kind of tips and tricks and stuff like that. So that became really interesting and a way to kind of take what I grew up doing pretty solo. Like art as a teenager was very much kind of like alone in your room, drawing something cool. You'd show your parents or maybe show a friend the next time you went over to their place to hang out. But like that was really it. There wasn't posting it on Instagram, in the mid 90s. So I think that once the ability to share stuff with strangers became a lot easier, then it really opened up. And just like I was saying with content creation nowadays, it kind of really, I got bit by that bug of like sharing the art with people and the commercial illustration side of things. That was just the easiest way to make money. Webcomics did not bring in a lot of cash, but doing illustrations for logo design or someone's t-shirt or drawing a cartoon of someone's family for a wedding or something like that was always more lucrative as far as a business.
Do you still, I mean, I know you still occasionally do like art streams, but do you still just, is there any part of you that goes back to I'm alone in my room doing this for me? Do you still kind of like, because there is I have a friend who does journaling for himself, right? And I tried it and it wasn't for me. And it's not because I'm a blogger and I feel the need to share everything I write. It just wasn't cathartic in any way. Like I didn't get anything out of it, but like I also never really got into it. But if at one point in your life you were doing it for yourself, kind of like, is there a part of you that still does it all?
I haven't drawn anything in 3, maybe 4 years.
Oh, wow.
I think that part of it is that creative outlet, that need to make and share something lately has been fed by Minecraft and podcasting.
Okay.
And so with podcasting, like the Spawn Chunks is recorded, edited, and published on Monday. We do it all in one day. And it's a team effort, but it is incredibly satisfying to be like, we woke up Monday morning with nothing. We were prepared. We made a thing, published a thing, shared a thing. The thing is done. And you walk away. I head to the gym Monday evenings going like, I did a thing today. Like I have done the job and I'm ready to move on.
First of all, the fact that you do that in one day, I know there's prep and I know you read articles beforehand, but the fact that you wake up on Monday and then go to the gym when it's done, that's, as someone who works so far ahead. So like, again, we're recording this a month ahead of time and that's kind of the process I've created. The idea of waking up, doing an episode and hitting publish is phenomenal. Like I'm almost speechless. It's kind of amazing that that's the process.
Well, thank you. And I will be very quick to point out that it's a team process. The Citadel
even
Cafe,
with 2 people, that still seems like amazing.
Thank you. With my other show, it'll be sometimes a month. Like I'll record a show in May and publish it in June because I just don't get to the editing or I have trouble with the editing. Johnny, my podcasting and producing partner on the Spawn Chunks, has a background in audio engineering. So he edits a podcast very, very quickly. We've also been at it for 6 years. We have a really good back and forth. And we have this live to hard drive mentality where unless it's a real flub on a news article or piece of information that we need to get right, or like, we mentioned in our little pre-show amble about like, a bird squawking or a sneeze or like something like that. We edit that kind of stuff out for audio quality.
Yep.
But as far as, normal conversation, we keep it flowing. We try to think live to hard drive. We do record live to a Discord audience. So there's also that kind of performance aspect to it. So we're prepared. And I think that does help. But to pull back the curtain, like I said, with the Citadel Cafe, I sometimes take a long time to edit that show. I think I'm just slow at it. But I think that, that creative outlet of doing the thing, whether it's a longer editing process with the Citadel Cafe or with the Spawn Chunks, combined with the fact that I do play Minecraft live on stream 3 or 4 days a week. And that is a creative game in itself. So I'm also... the ideas in my head, the visual things in my head are finding a way to get out to the world.
Okay.
It used to be through only drawing, because back when I was doing professional illustration, I was not playing Minecraft. Like I had some video games, but they would be like racing games or like first person shooters or just really recreational stuff. I wasn't doing a lot of creative things. And after the webcomics started to slow down a bit and I was doing a lot more commercial work, I did notice that because all of my creative outlet was for clients, I wasn't necessarily drawing as much for me.
Okay.
And I've noticed that missing it a bit lately. It's a weird kind of like, I don't want to say identity crisis, but like when you grow up and you're known as the artist, your family knows you're the artist, you went to school for the arts, and then you got the job in the arts like you said you were going to do. And then 20 years later, you're not doing the thing that you went to school for. And you're I love my day to day, don't get me wrong, but it's a weird sort of wake up call. It's like, well, it's not like I quit everything and went to work in an office job. Like I didn't give up on creating. I've just really kind of switched gears, and it's hard to swallow at first. You think like, well, did I fail, or am I giving myself a much needed break? Because I'm not sure if you've done any creative work with clients, but when you're doing illustration work, sometimes you can have very good clients, and sometimes the clients will just suck the creativity out of the room.
I started
and just
a web design business like in the early, after college. So maybe 2008, something like that. Right before like WordPress and like self-hosting stuff started. So I learned to like just hard code websites. And there are good clients. There are bad clients. I had a business partner who could do the art stuff. I was more like just this is the picture, make it work on the screen. I was like, okay, right. I can figure that out. But that taught me when I did get into corporate America and I worked with agencies to try and be the best client anyone's ever had, or the client representative, what have you. Because I never want to be the bad one. Right.
Yeah. Yeah. When I've worked on a few occasions with other people, I've always wanted to make sure that both people's interests were in the contract or in the agreement, whatever that happens to be.
Yeah.
And I think that sucks the wind out of my sails as far as doing that kind of stuff professionally for a while. And with podcasting and the Twitch stuff that I do, there are no clients, or at least there's no big clients, because the way that we've structured the podcasts for revenue, we've got 300 and something paying clients, right? So it's a lot easier to to deal with that than the other way around. If there was just one person, if the podcast was funded by one person, then that person would have an awful lot of input as to how the show would go. And this way it's more like, well, we can hear from our audience, and it makes sense for us to lean towards what the audience is gravitating towards. And I think that freedom it's nice after dealing with I had some really nice clients, but dealing with some of the early clients I had to deal with and the uncertainty of how that could go, or just looking for a new client like every other month, like that's tedious too, right?
Yeah, that's the reason I've gotten lucky in that my consulting career has kind of I've been like floundering from one client to the next. That's always just enough, but I am not really good at selling myself. And I feel like a lot of creatives and self-employed people are always pretty bad at selling themselves. I would say it's not universal, but in my experience, the better you are at the thing you do, the worse you are at selling yourself.
Yeah, I would say that's a pretty common thread. I really don't like sales either. And so was never good at it, never really put the time in to learn. Probably should have, would have made my early career as an entrepreneur a lot easier. But I relied on the work. I relied on, I had mentioned earlier, passion. You know, for me with the illustration stuff, like I loved doing it. I was never that fast at it, but I would be happy with what I was doing as a result. And that also usually meant the client was very satisfied with what they got. I often had to put in a lot of late hours to get it done on time because I wanted to put such a good foot forward.
Yeah.
But that quality ended up being my sales pitch, right? Like once you had enough on a website, you can say like, look, this is the kind of work that I do. If this is the kind of work that you want on your project, then reach out and hire me. And that was my entire pitch. And it served me well. And after a while, I started getting some return clients, and that started to help. You know, you're talking about stumbling from one client to the next. And what happened for me was like, I would do like a logo design or something for a small local company. And then a year or two later, they'd expand and they'd have a new office somewhere, or they'd have, a new logo they wanted to incorporate. And so they say, oh, well, we worked with Joel before, we'll just work with Joel again. And if you do that enough times, those return clients start to leapfrog each other. You know, like, so in 2013, you're working with one return client. And then in 2014, you're working with a different return client. And then 15 and 16, the same client from 2013 comes back. And so it builds itself up over time. It's a slow burn, but if you can get there, it was really good to do that. I think that the thing for me with the creative stuff, as far as client goes and your day to day, I did find it difficult to do engaging creative work all day long and then try to find time in my evenings to do my own for fun.
Okay.
And so one of the things that I find, you'll hear this from content creators as well, not just visual artists, but the temptation to monetize the different things that you're doing for fun. So like I would draw and learn how, comic strips for fun. And then I tried to turn that into part of my job, and it worked. Like it was part of my income for quite some time. Same thing with content creation. Like people play Minecraft for fun, and then they start doing content creation, and then it becomes like a part-time job, side hustle. Then it becomes, well, maybe I'm going to be good at this, that this might take over my entire job, depending on what the home situation is like. Right. And it's difficult to then say, okay, well, do you play Minecraft for fun anymore? And I do, but it's my job, right? So yeah. I don't play Minecraft when I'm not streaming. It's like, I feel like it's cannibalizing my own content, right?
Well, and you, when you make your hobbies your job, you no longer have any hobbies, really.
Yes. Yeah.
Yeah. So I have to go back for a second. You've been in podcasting for a very long time, and you talked about doing the Spawn Chunks live to an audience on Discord, but was performance, even in the audio space, was that ever, we talked about young you getting into illustration and drawing, but were you in plays? Like was there ever a point, cause the theatrical aspect of this, like I was always behind the scenes. The big thing for me about hosting this show was I was always the co-host. I was always the sidekick. I was the producer. This show was the first time I had ever been like, all right, no, it's me. I'm now the guy, right? But I was only ever stage crew, in like high school and college and stuff. And even when I played musical instruments, I'm a bassist. Again, I'm the sidekick. I'm not the guy. So this podcast, literally the first time that I decided to, be front and center. But had you been front and center before any of this?
The closest I could think of would be the guy in the class that was the artist. Like I would be the person in grade school or middle school that would be recruited to draw or paint decorations for a play or do a banner or a background drop for a photo for like grade 9 grad, like that kind of stuff. In high school, I did start playing guitar, bass guitar, as a matter of fact. And in university, I was in a cover band. We played some coffee houses and stuff, but I mean, bassist, you're not up front. Like we had a lead singer and a guitarist. And so it was comfortable in that I was up in front of people, but I didn't have to sing. I didn't have to speak. Never liked public speaking. Giving art history presentations and stuff was the bane of my existence. I would rather write a term paper. Like it was not something I enjoyed. So I find it very funny that I'm, now a podcaster as a profession, because I did not want to get up in front of people. Any kind of speech I ever gave was very nerve-wracking. Some of that probably my age, like, young man, teens through early 20s. You're just not used to that kind of stuff. You don't have a job that requires you to do that kind of thing. So yeah, I was never wanting to be center stage. And then when you get into art and webcomics and starting to push that stuff out there, you're, I want to say, not necessarily front and center. You're the one creating the thing. Like you're the only person behind it, but you're also behind the internet.
Yeah.
You're not out in front of people. And so I never really had the desire to be out there. I think that the combination of having a little bit of music in my background, and I'm not a musician. Like I said, I just played in a cover band. But then combined with my time in animation, where you're essentially an actor, but again, behind the cartoon. Yep. Like you're not on stage doing the thing. The script is written and you're having this little character do it. You're creating all the physical motions, but that kind of creates an idea of presentation, of emotion, of timing. And I think a lot of that did translate into podcasting when I wanted to roll it forward. But yeah, I was never fantasies about being an actor, like just you think of like, oh, that would be really cool to be in like the movies and the action films that we all grew up watching, like Star Wars or whatever. But like I never ever thought about it serious enough to try to be in a play or anything like that. I love the idea of stand-up comedy as a comic artist. I thought pretty funny. Like I would come up with my own jokes with my characters, but I found that I'm more of a character-driven human, as opposed to just someone that observes and makes jokes. So I knew how to write for comic strips, but I wouldn't have the first clue how to write for stand-up comedy. And again, it's that you are the one person in front of a crowd, and I cringe at the idea. I'm much better in group situations. I've done panels at conventions. But again, like you're not necessarily giving a talk. You're being interviewed about something you're an expert in, like podcasting or comics or drawing or whatever. And usually by people that are much younger than you in the crowd, saying like, oh, hey, like I'm a high school student. I want to do this. Like, what advice would you have for me? And if you're in your mid 30s or something, you're just like, oh, well, I can say I've been through that. I know exactly what you're going through and the questions that you have. And so when it's something that we'll say more of an authority on, I'm a lot more comfortable being front and center.
Okay.
But it's not something that I ever strive towards. And still, honestly, like we just switched to video for the Spawn Chunks with episode 300. And I've done a few one-off interviews on video where somebody else's podcast was video and they asked me to be there. And I was like, yeah, sure. And I'll come on video. That's fine. But this is like, we're hosting the show. And I'm, reading the news or reading emails and stuff like that live on video to an existing audience. It's not like I'm starting off and there's no one watching. Like the show's almost 6 years old. So you drop episode 300 and like, hey, by the way, now we're on YouTube. And you just kind of like, you try to put it in the back of your mind, how many people could potentially be watching on YouTube. You're just like,
are you sure
I'm
that's
not used to it.
Maybe you should just forget the potential number of how many people could be watching.
Yeah.
I mean, it does lead me to this other question. You are Joel Duggan online.
Last time I checked.
I am Agent Palmer online. Now, with the start of this podcast years ago, I introduced it as I'm Agent Palmer, also known as Jason Stershik. And so I kind of mixed the thing that we all do. And, I could name any number of creators out there that are one or the other or both. And many of them have been on your show. But you are Joel. And you're not, Agent someone else. You know what I mean? You're not. Not to put Johnny on the spot, but you're not Pixel Riffs, right? So,
correct.
I just want to know, like, are you happy? Like, you've heard, and you've talked to enough creators as well that have made that decision or not made that decision. Are you happy to be Joel, both online and as Joel, or do you kind of wish you had like, I kind of wish I had something else, There's no hiding when you're doing video, but
for me, I like having it as simple as possible. Okay. I did have a company, like, because I thought when I started working in animation after I finished school that I wanted to have my own studio and eventually it would want to grow. And I wouldn't want it to just be me because, well, if it's just me, well, then how do you grow when it's just your name on the business card? So I had a company called Animafax Entertainment, which was just animation and Halifax jammed into one word. It started with an A, so it came up early in the listings for companies that were local. And I was constantly telling people how to pronounce it and how to spell it. So, even if I had put my last name, like Duggan Entertainment or something like that on or Duggan Studios, on the card, I also would have been explaining, how to spell that or what do you even do? Like, it's just something studios. Like, what does that mean? And so I found that it was a lot easier. We talked earlier about explaining what you do to people. Well, if they couldn't remember exactly what you did and how to find you, all they had to do was remember your name. If you could Google at the time, Joel Artist Halifax, like I came up on Google. It was pretty straightforward, pretty easy.
Nice. Okay.
And so that made it simple for me. It's also kept me honest. And I think a lot of it is just an age thing. I always played video games growing up, but there wasn't a lot of online play until university. And even then it was just fleeting. So I didn't have like a gamer handle like a lot of people have now. I didn't have an identity that I wanted to protect because I didn't necessarily get super famous with anything. So I could, like a lot of the people that I know that have pseudonyms online, they also have spouses or kids or partners or other people. Like they just don't want to necessarily be found. And it's a different thing. If I was to start tomorrow, I would be on the fence about whether or not I would have, a pseudonym, because I feel like on one hand, people appreciate the honesty on the podcast, but then if it came to Twitch, like it would be probably better, knowing what the internet is like and the trolls that come by your chat room from time to time. Like, thankfully I have a lovely moderation team and they really do help out a great deal with all that. But I'm happy with it because I think that at this point I've made a name for myself doing it, and it's nice to keep it simple. I'm also not trying to spell a pseudonym, Pixelriffs, it's a cool pseudonym, but there's no E in Pixelriffs. So you're always explaining.
Yeah. It's still explaining. My real last name is Stershik, and I've heard every mispronunciation and seen every misspelling possible. Right. So, and by the way, Agent Palmer, if you say it fast enough, it is also a problem. Cause I've gotten things that are like Asian, and it's just like, cause depending on how fast as far as ease of use, I probably could have picked an easier pseudonym as well. Like it's one of those where it's never exactly perfect either way. But I'm always curious because again, like you, I would be on the fence if I went backwards and made that distinction. Now it's just both. I felt like this is my real voice. I was starting a podcast. There was no point in hiding it.
And I think it's the podcasting thing that made me stick with it, because even on podcasts, I think I still get introduced as Joel Duggan. Like maybe on Comics to Coast, Brian called me Joel and didn't really do the full last name. But then again, he often would do that just because of being kind of fun and chummy and like, I'm just going to say your full name because it's only me and your mother that get to do it, you know, that kind of thing. So I think that it was the audio format. And again, like you're also for the longest time hiding behind the microphone. Like I wasn't on video, or if I was doing video content, you'd see my hands when I was drawing, but that's it.
Okay.
And you wouldn't necessarily, be able to pick me out on the street. Not that, I'm making it sound like I was a lot more well-known on the internet than I really am, but that kind of thing, it's different when you're putting your face out there. But at the same time, going right back to the podcasters that I admire, they also use their first and last names. Like they have it out there. Sometimes it was required because they were working for a larger podcasting entity. So it made sense to have their first and last names out there. Other times it was just a personal choice. And I do find that they work under and present their content under a set of rules. Like they want to present a certain level. They're not stirring the pot, so to speak. And so they're not going to get the same amount of hate or shade or cancellation or anything like that because they're just not pushing those boundaries. And so at that point, it's a lot easier to put your full name on things. Now, again, say if I was to start a politics podcast here in Canada, I would be very hesitant to use my first and last name on that show. People would probably be able to draw a line and find me eventually, but I would want to make it as difficult as possible because those are some heated conversations and I would want to direct those away from my other content, right? So I think it also can be content dependent, like if you're going out there to start like a really kid-friendly YouTube channel, then like, sure, use your first and last name. Why not? Or your first name, at least as your handle or part of it. But if you're going to be a controversial, I'm going to poke the bear every time I'm behind a microphone or in front of a camera, then like you maybe want to choose like a, Superfly67 as a username or something just to keep it a little bit more anonymous. I mean, really these days, I was just talking with my buddy Steven about this on the Citadel Cafe recently, where one of the people he follows on TikTok, I can't remember the user's name, but their TikToks are all basically stitching other people. They're just kind of like, hey, look at me. I'm out here doing this thing. Bet you can't find me. And then he finds them. Like he knows what hotel they were staying in, what city, what floor they were on, whether they were on the east and the west side. And all he's going off of is like a photo and maybe like a little bit of what they might have posted and said in their social media posts. I mean, that's terrifying. And like you have to be really careful if you don't want to be found at all these days. So at some point it's just going to be kind of useless. So you might as well just keep yourself honest and go with your real name. For me, for my content anyway.
Whether it's a blog, podcast, stream, video, art, book, poem, song, album, no matter how big or little the thing may be, this conversation has laid out the two most important ingredients for success. 50% passion to create and 50% desire to share that which you create. That's it. If you have those two things and add them together, boom, success. I think too many people get caught up in the money and numbers game. Personally, I am creating the content I want to consume, as you've heard many say. And so how many downloads and how much or how little money I make is irrelevant. Most things fail by the money and numbers metric. Most podcasts that don't blow up go away after a few episodes. And that's because those creators don't look at the creation. They look at the result. Don't. Do not set yourself up that way. It's a trap, and too many people fall into it. Find yourself that passion to create and the desire to share, and then you'll be setting yourself up in a much better place. And if you need some motivation, Joel talks to his viewers on stream, and we both respond to reasonable inquiries because we're willing to share what we have learned. So if you don't have that passion or desire, don't worry about it. But if you do, you're well on your way already. Good luck, and thanks for listening to the Palmer Files, episode 128. And now for the official business. The Palmer Files releases every 2 weeks on Tuesdays. If you're still listening, I encourage you to join the discussion. You can find all related ways to contact Joel and myself in the show notes. There you can find Joel's podcasts, respectively, at the citadelcafe.com or thespawnchunks.com, or see all of his stuff with links to his socials, YouTube, Twitch at joelduggan.com. That's JOELDUGGAN.com. The music for this episode was provided by Henno Heitur. Email can be sent to this show at thepalmerfiles@gmail.com. And remember, your home for all things Agent Palmer is agentpalmer.com. All right, Joel, do you have one final question for me?
Earlier in the show, you mentioned that you used to play or still play bass guitar.
Yeah.
I have picked up a new hobby that will remain a hobby, foot down,
Okay.
flag in sand. This will not be going online, but I recently picked up an acoustic guitar and I'm learning to play. It's been 20 years since I've touched a guitar, so I'm basically a novice. So if you play beyond just bass, if you play also normal guitar or acoustic guitar, I would love any advice you have for someone that's been playing for 3 weeks.
Okay, so my first suggestion is stay away from Bob Dylan for a while. And I only say that as someone who, during the pandemic, I got very into Dylan. But I'm someone who, with the exception of a Twitch stream I played guitar on in front of for my buddy's 35th birthday, something. We did a little concert. We used to play back in the college days, and he wanted to run a concert through his Twitch channel, and I went up and I did that. With that exception, I've mainly played with my headphones on, whether it's bass or the guitar, electric or acoustic. I play with music. I play with the actual things it's not for, performance. So I'd say stay away from Dylan is number one, because the patterns and rhythms are just, he doesn't play in 4/4. It doesn't matter in any capacity. And I got on a big Dylan kick and I went, oh my God, I thought I could play acoustic guitar. Like, I thought I was okay. I thought I was okay. And then I started to try and play him and I went, I don't know anything about this instrument apparently. But my second, and this is the most important, would be, the internet has been so good as far as guitar tabs. Find the songs you like, whether they're easy or not. It doesn't matter. Like, I've been playing guitar and bass for almost 30 years now. I still can't play a B7 on an acoustic guitar. But a bar B is fine for most of the time, right? So I've just been, and I never had formal lessons, and I was relatively self-taught, but I think the key is, no matter what your form is, if you can get your chords down, A, D, G, C, E, just find the songs you like that are close. even if you can't do the riffs, even if you can't do the finger picking, if you can just play along with songs you like, you're more likely to pick up the guitar after a long day on a Monday night, after you've done all of the Spawn chunks and gone to the gym. You're more likely to come home and play a song you like than you are to practice scales. And so I think it's just about like, oh, this is this thing. And you will find a capo is also your best friend, because like there are songs out there that will be like, these are the same 3 chords, but if you put a capo 2 on it, now all of a sudden you can play this other song, right? And I started a playlist of like, here are the acoustic songs I like that are simple. And I have two playlists. I have one that's like, these are the songs I know how to play. Sometimes I still have to look up the chords, but I know how to play them. And these are the songs I'd like to learn that are a little bit out of my whatever, my range, or I just can't ever remember them. And so it's just a matter of, if I just want to play, I definitely put on the songs I know. And if I'm in the mood to maybe challenge myself, I go to the maybe. But it comes with just like listening to music and going, oh, that seems simple enough. And just curating a list that's kind of like my own private tutor with the internet guitar tabs, because then it's like, this is fun. This is supposed to be fun. That's, and that's what I tell you. You didn't pick this up to monetize it. You put your foot down that this is definitely going to be for you. And therefore, do whatever you can to make it about you. Play your favorite songs. Play your favorite bands. And sometimes you don't know how easy or simple it is either. So, like, if you're listening to, just the radio and a song comes on, just make a note of it. That's the most important thing, because you're always going to forget. And then when you go home, look at the tab or the chord thing, or especially if it's just chords, and go, oh, that's 4 chords. I know all those chords. I can just pull up the tab and go. And I think that would be my advice.
I really appreciate that, because in a lot of ways I'm on the right track then, because I'm learning to play the basic chords and the rhythm for Stick Season by Noah Kahan. I'm not sure if you're familiar with the song.
I'm not, no.
Faster than I could probably play right now. Like, the song is faster than I'm capable of playing. I can't switch chords quite fast enough, but I can still just hit the whole notes and then switch to the chords at the whole notes. And it's just the satisfying feeling of hitting the right chord with something you're listening to. Like you said, like, I've got my ear pods in and I'm just kind of sitting on the couch. I did find a couple of tutorial videos online about how to play, but like more interpret the song. They're like, okay, look, how he plays it is hard. Here's a capo on the 2nd fret. Here's how to play it in my interpretation, which I think will sound good. Will get you playing along with it. But it's just the tempo of the song. The strumming is up there as far as skill level, I think. So in a good way, I've bit off a little bit more than I can chew, but I can still play parts of it in time. And then I just can't switch yet from, G to a D, whether or not I hit the D. I mean, I got big hands. And so sometimes the D is a little bit out there. I think I only just recently clued in about the shifts in your wrist, like how a G and a D, your wrist is in a 100% different position. Whereas when you're doing like E, A, even a C, well, C is a little bit different, but like E and A and even G, they're roughly the same position. It's only when you get into some other spots.
I'll tell you, I have because I was self-taught, I have poor positioning. And one of the first songs I ever learned to play which was well out of my wheelhouse at the time, and I should have never learned it. And I think this is the reason I have such bad posture on the acoustic guitar, is Patience by Guns N' Roses. And the reason that ruined me is because it's got a D, F sharp in it, where you need your thumb to be on the low E at 2. And so my thumb is always not where it's supposed to be for that one song I learned too early in my development playing. So I just have poor posture, or poor form, I should say, all the way around. But like, if you like the song, right? And that's why it's very important. There are some songs that we all love that can be very boring to play. But if you like it, it doesn't matter. And one of them, like, for example, the Tragically Hip's Wheat Kings is like 3 chords maybe, and it's not that much fun to play unless you like the song, and then you're fine, right? And so it's not challenging. And it's not say as challenging as say like Blues Traveler's Runaround, which is a nice progression that you just repeat over and over again. But you have to like the song, because even that gets boring. It's the same 4 chords for the entire, like, so you just have to, as long as you like the song, as long as you're playing music you like, that's it. And look, you were a bass player. When we were starting out, here's your 5 notes and you're going to play on the quarter, right? Just dun, 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 dun. You have to like the music. It's just kind of the similar thing. And I would also say, coming from a place where you have played bass before, just know that if you can, in your mind, translate it to just play the chords on the quarter note like you would have for the bass, that's all you really need to do. When you get comfortable, then maybe you can do a little picking or like do a movement or something else. But the rest of it's just you're just playing some fun stuff. And I can send you my playlist, because a lot of it's fairly simple. I'm not great, but I have fun, and that's the bit.
Well, and that's fantastic. I'd love the playlist, man. I really appreciate that, because that's what I want to do. Like, I want to have fun with it. I've been more and more into music lately. I've always liked it, but I've never been like a real music aficionado. I just kind of like what I like, and I play the same stuff. You know, every once in a while I find a new artist, but most of the time it was just the same old, same old. But of course, as I picked up the guitar, I've started to like seek out different styles of things. And thankfully, like, you have all these songs now on your playlist. I have similar. I've got, you know, the songs I like to listen to, but then there's also like, these are the songs I want to learn how to play.
Okay. Yep.
And as I listen to those on Apple Music, when that song, like that list of 10 songs runs out, Apple's like, you might like this one. You might also like this one. So it's been growing over the last couple of weeks, as I just like, I don't bother to stop the playlist. It just kind of keeps on going. It's like, oh, I've never heard of these people. Let's just add those to the playlist. That sounds like a pretty straightforward song. And I know that I'm getting a little ahead of myself in that I've been dabbling around with some finger picking just to kind of get used to it. And it is really difficult. I'm finding it. I know the pattern. I can understand the pattern. I can tell my hand to do the pattern. It'll do the pattern twice through. No problem. The right timing, right beat, everything. 3rd time through the pattern, wrong finger goes. And you're just kind of like, what? I know that I just told you 10 seconds ago to do this correctly. What happened?
It's just it's just one of those things. And I've resigned myself to the fact that, like, I'll probably never play Blackbird by the Beatles, right? Like, you know, so there's some, okay, that's fine. Right. And I still remember enough of Stairway, from back in my youth that I can still play Stairway, but I'm okay with my simple playlist, right? It's just it's for me. And I think I'm happy for you, because I sit here talking to creators and business people and all kinds of different people. And a lot of the time towards the end, if I have the time, I ask them what they do for themselves. And too often people don't have a thing for themselves. Not because, like they've monetized the thing that used to be their hobby, but because they're just so busy and they don't have that. They don't have a passion for something else. And I think that's like, I feel bad I asked the question because I brought it up. Now they're going away. I don't follow up necessarily, but like sometimes I do. And I'm like, I'm so sorry. Do you want help finding a hobby? Like, I feel bad that I just made you think about the fact that you don't do anything for yourself. But I'm happy for you that you've taken this step, because it's so important and you need the recharge.
Oh, 100%. Yeah. I like having the distraction. I like the fact that it is not, I say it's not in front of a screen, but I've been using obviously my TV and YouTube to like play along, but eventually I won't need that stuff. Eventually I'll be able to just sit down, you know, on a porch or in my living room or wherever and play a couple things. I grew up liking jazz and am looking forward to learning some blues on the guitar. So some stuff that I can play on my own and not have to necessarily have an accompaniment track going. So that is long-term goals. Like I think with anything like this, it's important to have like a long-term vision and then some immediate, like, I need to work on like switching between C and D repetitively, just to kind of get that down. And because once I feel like you can unlock those skills, and I don't think I've missed a day. I think I've picked it up for at least 15 minutes every day since I got it.
It's really it sounds so simple, and everybody always, says the thing, and it's just like getting back into reading, which I turned myself back into a reader just by like 15 minutes, like a few pages every day. Yep. Even if it's not a lot, even if you don't get the whole chapter done, even if you're only picking it up for like 3 songs, like just a little bit every day, so important.
And I think a really good sign about it too is that like I'll sit down at after my lunch at noon, just like, oh, I got 45 minutes. This is great. I'll grab this for 15 and then I'll go stream. And then at 5 minutes to 1, I'm like, oh crap, I've got to go.
Nice.
I need to put this guitar down and go get ready to go.
That is a great sign.